our ancestors didn't have a choice. But we have the choice that we want to return home, and we certainly don't want to face any more barriers. There's been enough barriers and issues every year, having to pay for residency, going to African countries where you can't even own land because you're seen as a foreigner. We're not foreigners. We were just born in a foreign land. Africa is born in us. So I don't understand the relevance even of that question when the natives of the country aren't asked to do that. So it's absolutely preposterous and a totally irrelevant and ridiculous question to ask, because it doesn't actually apply to those people that are natural born citizens.
Jumbo, good people, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In case you're new here, kindly consider subscribing and tap the bell for notification so that you are always notified whenever I'm posting. Today we're going to be hosting someone that you love, someone that you've watched before, Blaxit. You know what Blaxit means? Well, without further ado, let me just invite our guest. Hello.
Greetings, sis. How are you?
I'm good. What about you?
How are you? Thanks for having me on your show again.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're glowing. How's the Gambia?
Oh, it's beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. It's really, really lovely. I've been out and about for the last few days filming, so it's been really lovely, spending a lot of time in nature.
All right. You can introduce yourself for those who don't know Blaxit and tell us what is Blaxit.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know me, and I suspect that's a lot of people, I am Juliet, and aka Nancho Mandino Kajabi, and I am one of the co-founders of Blaxit, which is a YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel was actually started by Wodo Maya after he interviewed me. And our focus is all about the repatriation, relocation, and back to the motherland, and all things concerning that. So that includes citizenship, etc.
And you mentioned citizenship. I know it's one thing that you are very, very passionate about. I know you've been pushing for automatic citizenship. I would love to know, where do you get this passion and why automatic citizenship?
Well, to be honest with you, it's something that has been on the agenda for many, many years. It's not just something new. So I think it's beginning to brew. It's getting stronger and stronger. And it really ignited my passion most recently because of the new draft constitution. But in fact, we have been campaigning since 2012. We came back to Gambia with a group of us in 2016 because we wanted it to be not just at the Roots Festival. So automatic citizenship already existed here. So I just want to make that absolutely abundantly clear, that during the Homecoming Festival and Roots Homecoming Festival, or Roots Festival, as it was abbreviated to, we were actually given automatic citizenship during Fatumpe. And so Fatumpe was a combination of events that was embroiled into one, which concluded with the government, the then president, giving us our automatic citizenship and our passports. So that stopped, unfortunately, in 2014. So one of the reasons why we've been campaigning quite heavily recently is because obviously there hasn't been any more Roots Festival since 2014. So we've kind of been left hanging since then. And so during this time, 2017, they introduced that they were going to be, if you like, readdressing the whole issue of the Constitution via a constitutional review commission. And so everybody had their say about things that they wanted. So it was our opportunity to then have a say, to then say, look, is it something that we can have enshrined within the Constitution? And so with that being said, I came back here in 2019 in the February, and we started to organize ourselves and rally around that fact. Now, there are other people and other groups here, I think one called ADH or something, and they were here, but they weren't registered within the Gambian authorities. So we kind of met with loads of different groups and realized that it was probably better for us to have one group, which is recognizing, and also one that everybody participated in the coming together of the group. And that's how the Council of African Descendants was founded. And I'm involved in that. I do the sort of PR and stuff, and I'm currently the secretary, and Adrian is the vice chair. So that is like what we did to have an organized body that we could then sit down and talk to the government as a representative of all African descendants that are here that want automatic citizenship. So that is the reason why we formed the group, and it's been working well. We had a big public meeting to get everybody involved. We recently had a press conference, which went really well. We had a lot of press coverage as a result of that. I spoke to the president's spokesperson. We've spoken to some ministers, and we're hoping to have an audience with His Excellency Adama Barrow, who is the president of the Gambia, about the same subject. So it's very important at this time to let people understand that this is a Pan-African issue. This is not just centralized in the Gambia. Yeah, we're fighting in the Gambia, and when I say fight, it is a struggle at the moment, and the struggle is making people understand our heritage, our background, because it seems as though there's some amnesia around slavery, around the unfortunate legacy of slavery, and we are one of the unfortunate legacies, or fortunate in some ways because we've returned home. So the legacy of slavery seems to be somewhat forgotten. And so in terms of our history and our origins, that is something that needs to be reinstated. And it needs to be stated again and again that actually we are Africans. We never gave up our citizenship. We never gave up our right to be African. And when our ancestors left these shores, they did not have to go through any kind of immigration. They did not have to go through any form of citizenship. And they certainly didn't have a passport. They were branded, in fact, by slave owners who branded them with hot irons on their bare flesh. And we mustn't forget the pain and the suffering that our ancestors have gone through. And one of their wishes, I'm sure, was for their future generations, for their future great-grandchildren to return. And we are those same said great-great-grandchildren who are now returning. So we don't want to be met with hostility and met with the same treatment and going through the same systems as our very oppressors. And so it's almost like we've forgotten who was responsible for slavery, and we've forgotten who's responsible for the over-exploitation of Africa. And we've forgotten who's responsible for taking, so many millions of people out of Africa. I mean, millions and millions of people were taken over 400 years, and many of whom died in the bottom of the sea, many of whom who didn't make the journey back. And we have been fortunate enough to actually make the journey back.
So something that you mentioned that up to 2014, there was automatic citizenship. Why do you think it was cancelled after 2014?
It wasn't cancelled as such. What happened was that in 2016, there was a general election here. And at that time, the previous president was voted out of power. And as a result of that, a new president came in, but it was under a coalition government. And I don't know if you've had any history of dealing with coalition governments.
Yeah, we have.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure you know exactly what I mean. So things tend to move a little slowly because they have to go through a lot more checks and balances and a lot more ears. And so as a result of that, it's always a delicate balance for those in power. And so I think that it wasn't a priority. I don't think it's been made a priority by the current government. I don't think it's intentional. That's for sure. I don't think it's intentional. I just think that there were lots of systems and lots of changes that are also going on, and they took precedence, as you can imagine. However, there has been a radical change in the way in which the world is at the moment because the current pandemic, and also because of the fact that the world is now seeing the impact of racism and discrimination outside of Africa, because a lot of people, you know, think that all that glitter is gold outside of Africa. So they think you go to England, it's going to be all perfect and you're going to walk on gold pavements. But that is not the case. And people are becoming more and more aware of the realities that the opportunities that are there are limited. So you might go and get a good education. You might get a good job. You might be discriminated against and lose that job. You might not be able to keep that job. And so that is what the situation is that the reality is coming home with many of us returning. We're telling the truth. Because many of us, when we come back, especially as Africans, we like to pretty up. We don't want to tell the truth that really we were working cleaner and, you know, we didn't have a great job and we shared a flat with 10 other people. We want to take a picture next to someone else's car and pretend that it's ours. You know, but reality check, you know, is now becoming true because of social media, because of cameras. And so now things are now becoming more televised. And so that is what is happening. So the difference now is that people are now saying, we want to come home. Africa has to shape up quickly to recognize the changes that are happening now. You see? Because if Africa doesn't do that, it's going to miss an opportunity. Because people want to divest their investment and come home and invest in Africa. Now, if Africa wants to depend on aid rather than the support of its brothers and sisters and do what the people who are going to be pulling their strings as rather colonizers want for them, then so be it. But they've got to realize that the colonizers have never had their best interests at heart. And never will. So we have our best interests at heart. And at the end of the day, the divorce that has happened to us is not a natural divorce. It was not willing. People were forced against their will. They were shackled and chained and beaten and starved and abused and tortured and murdered and forced into ways of life and belief systems they never had before. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a willing situation or a voluntary situation like occurs now where someone decides that I want to go to America to live, then that's their choice. But our ancestors didn't have a choice. But we have the choice that we want to return home, and we certainly don't want to face any more barriers. There's been enough barriers and issues. Every year having to pay for residency, going to African countries where you can't even own land because you're seen as a foreigner. We're not foreigners. We were just born in a foreign land. Africa is born in us. And that is what needs to be remembered. Africa is born in us, and we choose to return.
I get where you're coming from, and I just wanted to understand. So you had a coalition government. Of course, I know we did have a coalition government. You mentioned about a coalition government, that things changed at that point. Was it constitutionally changed? Did the citizens vote for the changes in the constitution? Or was it just something that was meant by presidential order? Like, how did that happen?
Well, basically, what happened was that the Constitutional Review Commission, considered everybody's submissions, and Blaxit made 72 submissions, not including my live submission, and the submissions of other people like Matthew Hippolyte and Luke McKenzie, who are Luke McKenzie is the chair of Code, and Matthew Hippolyte is head of the executive of Code, which is Council of African Descendants. And so they gave representations, as did other people, quite a few, and we all gave representations. Anyway, there was a report made which came out in March. This was in December. The report came out in March, and there was Section 188. Because although there are some groups we don't all agree on the same points, one of the things we did all agree on was that we wanted an exception clause. And the reason being is because of the fact that we would be unfairly affected by the new land clauses that they wanted to add into the new constitution, or to have it in the draft, and that were in the draft. So there were those elements, plus there was a big warm welcome to us as African descendants, and also there was what we asked for, which was a reduction, right? Well, we wanted automatic citizenship, full stop. That was what we wanted, and that is what we asked for. So the automatic citizenship program is based over 2 years. So you get initial partial citizenship when you arrive in the country. So you get a stamp in your passport that would say, you are you have a certificate of citizenship. That gives you many of the rights. I'd say, 70, 80% of the rights of an ordinary Gambian. So you're made to feel welcome. You're made to feel part of the society. The rest comes at the end of a program, which could be up to 2 years. I'd like it to be shorter, but at the end of the day, the proposed time reduction was 2 years. So I created the program within that framework. And so you'd go through an integration and also assimilation and language program. So you'd be adopted into a family, adopted into a village, very important, and also learn the language so that you could easily integrate. After then, obviously, you would go and apply for citizenship as you would, as anyone else would. So, that is the process. And that was the compromise that we made in order to, be integrated into the new constitution. However, the new constitution didn't even pass. After the second reading, it didn't pass. So we didn't go to a third reading. And so for us, we're back under the old constitution. Now, because we weren't included in the new constitution, it wasn't really a heartbreaker for us in that sense, because under the old constitution, we were able to make an amendment or go for a private member's bill, because the new constitution would have gone to a referendum, you see? And so, in fact, for us now, that is what we are considering as the Council of African Descendants, is looking at the other ways that we can ensure that we get it. But we are going to sit down and have an audience with the president at some point, hopefully before the next election, and discuss it and look at the best way forward, because you can also get citizenship by executive order given by the president. And so this is another one of the options that we're looking at. But like I said, this isn't just about the Gambia. This is about a Pan-African situation, because people are going to be returning to countries all over the world. And so the only country that seems to have really taken this forward in a progressive manner has been Ghana thus far, and Sierra Leone have agreed to allow people who can prove their DNA. I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that, because, you know, people who I know taking their DNA test come from 10 different countries. So it's not really, and living in Sierra Leone, you take your test and then you're not from Sierra Leone, but that's where your heart says you are. But who says even that the DNA test is correct? Because I know someone who had 2 tests done and they gave different results. So it's not a finite science. I'm not against it. I'm saying that it gives you a good reference, and I wholly support, you know, companies like African Ancestry. I think they do a great job, and they actually define it right down to tribe, which is great. But now tribes, and so they call tribes, but I call them, you know, different cultural groups. Different cultural groups are now spread all over Africa. So you'll get Fulanis in Nigeria, Fulanis in Gambia, Fulani people all over Africa. So once again, we're left with a dichotomy. And the thing is that if my spirit brings me to Gambia, then Gambia should accept me. If this is where I've purchased my house, this is where I've invested my money, this is where, you know, I've got my child in school. And so I shouldn't be treated the same as a Tubab or a Mozungu. Why should I be treated the same as an Asian or a Lebanese person? And why should we have to be an investor? So, you know, although we are, 90% of the time we come and we invest heavily into the country, and we open businesses and we build our homes and we create a lot of employment and also attract inward investment. So it is a shame, really, that Africa is not waking up to the fact of what's going on. They need to know what time it is. It's mass exodus time. We're coming home. Yeah, the long lost brothers and sisters of Africa are returning. We are coming home. We're homecomers.
Blaxit time. It's Blaxit time.
Blaxit time, exactly. It totally is Blaxit time. It is Blaxit time.
Sure.
You know, also, they had Brexit. They had Europe.
Yes.
And
yes.
now it's time
now,
to
yeah, you know, you mentioned the issue of Sierra Leone, where if you can prove that, and like you mentioned, there was actually a lot of migration even within the continent, and even the borders that exist did not exist back then. These borders were created, so probably at that time there wasn't like a country known as Sierra Leone or Senegal or Gambia, Kenya. There wasn't countries like that. We had probably different kingdoms which were larger than these small boundaries that were created during the Berlin Conference. So sure, I agree with you on that. So is there, you've mentioned about there was a new constitution. What were the amendments? Was it just about the citizenship, or there were other amendments that were also being made? And is there a possibility that it can still go back to Parliament again in order to be passed to law?
Well, basically, we can, like I was saying to you, we can have a private members bill. And we can propose an amendment to the existing constitution. And so we have met with honourable members of parliament who are assisting us. And we also have quite a few supporters here in the Gambia, and also outside of the Gambia, I hasten to add, from different countries who would like to have the same thing in their countries, and I'm wondering, why don't we have this? Is a great idea. And so I said that what I want to do is to, you know, embark on an automatic citizenship tour where I can go and make presentations to those people who are influential in order to explain to them the process in the same way which I have here, and also implement it if so requested. And I think that's so important, because it's not very hard to implement. It's the easiest thing in the world to implement, and to train your staff at the airport, you know, to ask those questions and just include repatriation. train your immigration staff to have a script, to say, welcome to the Gambia, what's the purpose of your visit? And if they say, we're coming to repatriate, we're coming for good, we've come home, then, why not? So they can then get a certificate of citizenship in their passport. They're still going to pay residential for a residential pass for 2 years until they get their full citizenship. And we are asking for people to donate towards an African development fund as well, because what the country would lose in terms of the ongoing income from you, from your residency pass for 15 years, because it takes 15 years currently here to get citizenship by naturalization.
That's really long. Keeping in mind that's a lot of time. Keeping in mind that it used to be automatic citizenship to 15 years. I mean, 5 years, like 5 years would make sense.
No, it's always been 15 years in the Constitution. It was that the government gave it using his own protocol. So he used his own executive order to give people citizenship at the Roots Festival. So it was always there. But he obviously was a Pan-Africanist and knew it was about, our coming home. He knew, about Marcus Garvey's prophecy. And so he knew that we would be coming. And so that's the reason why he did that. And so I think that the fact remains that it needs to change in the Constitution. If they want to do it like that for other people, that's fine, but not for us. That's all I'm saying. There needs to be an exception clause made for us. If they want Wazungus to wait 15 years, I have no issue with that. If they want Lebanese and Indians to wait 15 years, in fact, I do take issue with that, because in China, you can't even get citizenship. In Lebanon, Africans can't even get citizenship. And so in those countries that do not grant citizenship to Africans, Africans should not grant citizenship to them either. Exactly. It's time to change up the plate. The Constitution is a colonial document. And it was created by colonial powers. It's time for us to program.
It's meant to serve their interests, not our interests. Most countries are still using the colonial constitution that wasn't really meant for ours.
No. In fact, England imposed the constitution here, and England has an unwritten constitution. It's hypocrisy of the highest order. So, it's time for us to follow, in what Rwanda has done by repealing thousands of colonial laws. It's time for Africa to govern Africa and be in control of Africa by Africans, and not to be controlled by outside influences, because they only have their own interests at heart. They don't have Africans' interests at heart. And it's time for us to stop thinking about filling our own individual pockets and start looking at Africa as a whole. Because if not, we're just going to go down a negative route, and they're going to utilize them and use them in the same way that has always been done. So Africa is not going to be where it should be. And it will just be overexploited year after year after year, because it's overexploitation by external and internal.
Sure. A question, probably that's going to be my last question for this part of the interview. If there was an option for automatic citizenship, like you said, when someone lands and they say they're coming home and all that, but then they told that now that you're coming home, you'll have to relinquish your other citizenship. What's your take on that?
Well, that was actually asked in the press conference, and I found it a very interesting question that anyone should even ask that, because firstly, when anyone from Gambia goes to England or goes to America and they come back, they're not asked to relinquish their passport. And so in most African nations, they're allowed to have dual citizenship. So I don't understand the relevance even of that question when the natives of the country aren't asked to do that. So it's absolutely preposterous and a totally irrelevant and ridiculous question to ask, because it doesn't actually apply to those people that are natural born citizens. So who is born and has their family in another country where they were born, but want to return to their origins, should even be given that question or choice? That in of itself, shows us that we're not in a place that we should be mentally. Our mindset needs to be addressed. Our mindset needs to be addressed. Firstly, because you're an African, home or abroad. Okay. And the old saying says, when I spoke to the Council of Elders here in Sanyang, they said to me, no matter how long a log remains in the water, it will never be a crocodile. Okay? And so no matter how long we have been out of Africa, we still remain Africans. So we don't have to relinquish anything, because our ancestors died for that. And we didn't ask to be born there. We were taken there by force. And so there were no passports, there were no citizenship, there was no immigration when our ancestors are taken. So, and there are no records kept by most African nations. We have to find our roots from slave ships. And remember that some of our ancestors were children taken away from their parents to ensure that they would not know anything about their history. They would not know anything about their ancestry, and they certainly wouldn't know where they were from. And many of our ancestors who were actually enslaved were taken as children. So this is something that has to be taken into consideration. So even that question, you know, is like a slap in the face. It's like a spit, like someone taking spit and rubbing it in your face. It hurts even to hear it. So when I heard it at the press conference, for me, I'll chuck it in the bin. I'm not bothered. But, you know, for many other people who have their children in a family day, as I do, I don't have that choice. And I have that choice.
Okay.
And so they're not giving up their passports. I don't see why we should, and no one else is. And so that question shouldn't even be addressed to us.
Okay.
It's a very damaging question.
Okay, we're asking like that question because I've always had that question, and I always do ask it in my interviews because it's one of the questions that, you know, people ask. That's based on the fact that if it's automatic citizenship, the fact that there's a lot of people who look like us, came from the motherland, but in the West, and they might not have like they are in the system. They're part of the system, so they might not have like the interest of the country, or they could be used against the country. So what should be done to ensure that that doesn't happen? For those who might
firstly, the first place that you need to look at is actually the history of Africa. And look at people like Patrice Lumumba and what happened to him. Yeah? Traitors are within.
Yes.
Traitors are within. So it's always going to happen. It's something that you just got to be mindful of. Look at what happened to Winnie Mandela. They didn't come from Europe. They didn't come from America. Exactly. So we have historical references to know that, you know, we have people, look at Stephen Biko. We have historical references to draw upon. And so that question should be addressed in a historical context, in that people will look for their own self-interest no matter where they are. So there's no extraordinary threat imposed by anybody else. The enemy is always within.
Okay, I get that point. I know like a lot of our good leaders that we had, they had to use our people to take them away. Even right now, a lot of things happen. You could be organizing, planning something really nice, but the people who sabotage you are basically the people that you are working with. It always happens. So
Listen,
that's why
I have people who are against me, and they say it publicly. You know, they're not for automatic citizenship. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. I have people who publicly say that, you know, they're not for it. And so they're entitled to their opinion, and they go out publicly to come out against us, when I'm sure when automatic citizenship happens, and it will happen, believe you me, in my lifetime, when it does happen, they're going to be the first in the queue to get it. And it will be dual citizenship, because that is the only way forward. But like I said, there are prisons in every African country because there are criminals in every African country. There are prisons in every European country because there are criminals in every European country. There are prisons in every American state because there are criminals in every American state. And so, and the biggest criminals and the worst criminals on the planet do not look like us.
Or maybe they could find a way that can check somebody's record and things. But now the problem is also in the Western world, there's a lot of our people who've been incarcerated for things they didn't do.
Exactly.
So
Loads.
Also work.
Loads. In fact, if you look in America, there are more people actually who are either awaiting trial or don't have the money for bond, who haven't actually been proven to have committed a crime. And also for child welfare, and not paying for child maintenance and support. And so these aren't criminal offences. They're financial binds that people find themselves in, yet they're criminalised by the system. Even me, myself, I have witnessed firsthand someone being accused of a murder that they did not commit. Even myself, I was accused of a crime I did not commit. It is commonplace for that to happen. And we have to stop the stereotype of all Black people being criminals, because that's another false fallacy and another perception, stereotype, false propaganda that has been imposed on us by the Western media intentionally to make us subdivide, to make us not trust each other, to make us not invest in each other, and for us to stop us from working together. And we have to wake up and smell the coffee and realize that we've been had. we've all been had.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking, like, if most of our leaders were not compromised, you very well know our leaders are very much compromised and being controlled. Like, it's, move here, move, do this, you do this. If you don't want to do it, there's some sort of punishment or wherever, or maybe some have maybe been involved in some things that Western powers could be knowing. I think if our leaders, we had leaders who are not compromised, that would build proper systems and all that, I think that would have been just like a walk in the park.
The problem is we're not leading ourselves. The problem is that we're not leading ourselves. The problem is that we're not leading ourselves. We're all change makers. I said this, even recently in my own program, we are all change makers. Why do I need to be led? Why do I need to be led? We could have a resource-based economy that would work very well across Africa. We don't need their systems. We didn't have their systems millions of years ago, and we lived, we succeeded. We had grand empires, so why do we need them now? Why do we had kings and queens, and underneath that we had different systems of self-governance, of local councils, of councils of elders, village councils, which still are in existence today. They are still in existence today. It's just that they have become disempowered to a degree, because they have become castrated because of Eurocentric systems and hierarchies. But we can regain our kingships and our queenships we can regain that, because it was about serving the people, not controlling the people. And that is the difference. When you was a prince, some people didn't even want to become a prince because they knew they would have to be in servitude their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a system of servitude. It wasn't a system of manipulation, control, and corruption. And so there's the difference. There's the difference. We need to go back to African systems for Africa, because all you're doing is having all of these alternative lifestyles imposed on Africa. You're having all different kinds of systems imposed on Africa that don't work well, because I haven't seen a country yet that I would say is succeeding under democracy. I could tell you about Libya and Libya's new democracy. I could tell you about, you know, Afghanistan and its new democracy. Those nations are broken nations. Is that what democracy brought to them? Bombs and millions of deaths? Is that democracy? Is democracy starvation and poverty? Is democracy disempowerment and stopping capability of growing what you eat and eat what you grow? Is that democracy? Other people feeding you? Is that democracy? Not having a choice anymore in what happens in your own household, what happens in your own village. Is that democracy really? So I don't know if all of these systems fit. And I'm not talking about authoritarian or dictatorship over one or other, because they all come out of the same colonizer system.
True.
And I'm asking us, how can the man that enslaved us want to free you?
Never.
Enslaved you once, they're always going to want to enslave you. They're never ever going to change. A jackal's going to be a jackal. An elephant is going to be an elephant. And let me tell you, this tiger ain't changed his stripes. So we have to really just think, right? We need to come together. Maybe I'm the beacon call coming to Africa. Maybe I'm like a little lighthouse going round and round and round and round with a light, you know, saying to our people, come home. Because there is the 6th region. There are, you know, so many other governmental bodies that need to wake up. I've spoken to the AU, wake up and work to make this happen. We need reparations. Don't sleep on us. Don't be compromised. Don't let the white man give you little shekels and little money, because they're only giving you the little cream. They're not giving you the whole lot. So you're just selling your people out for a slim amount while they take the rest. And this is always what happens. I remember a story of what happened. I think it was in Ghana, when some Chinese people were found illegally mining gold. And they were importing these machines in to say that they were doing it for the gold. And then they were finding out that when they were saying that they were going to sell these machines, they were saying that they were going to be fixed. And they had to send these machines out to be fixed. And the government said, no, you know, we're not going to allow you to take these machines out to be fixed. When they actually inspected the machines, they found the machines were full of gold. And this is what I'm saying, yeah? There's always the understory, there's always the backstory, and there's always the two-faced story. They never come showing their true face. Yeah, you had the mercenary missionaries that came with the army. We've got to learn that they have never changed, are never going to change, and things aren't going to change until we learn to say, no, this is Africa for Africans. The same way that China said, this is China for Chinese. But yet they want Africa. Yeah? No. You overpopulated your own country. Let Africa be for Africans.
So lastly, how can people who are interested in supporting your cause, or how can we contribute to your cause, both people in the diaspora and us on the continent? What do we need to do? Do we need to also write constitutions, or what do we do?
Well, rather than confuse you by giving you two emails addressed, one's for Code and one for me, I'll just give you the one for Blaxit. So the first thing you can do is email us, and that is at blaxithome, blaxithome@gmail.com. So you can email us at blaxithome@gmail.com. Eto usually receives all of those emails and is really hardworking. And so anything that you would like to contribute to help, if you've got any contacts politically and otherwise in any African nations, we would appreciate that. That's really crucial and important to us to make those links in other countries. We would like to speak to Julius Malema. We would like to speak to Joshua Mopongo. We'd like, Dr. Susan Tete to help us with that. PLO Lumumba, all of the movers and shakers. Dr. Arakana, I've been waiting for over a year to do an interview with her. So I'm hoping that it's forthcoming very soon. Well, not a year, actually. It was January, so not quite a year, I exaggerate. But I'm hoping that will come together, because one of the things we have to do is find time for each other. Very important that we do that. I mean, I find it challenging to juggle my time sometimes, so I do understand how busy she and others are, but we have to find time so that we can become vocal pieces and actually talk and strategize together with Dr. Malana, Dr. Cambon, all of the movers and shakers, and people like you, African Tigress, Wodo Maya, and other people that are vocal and superstar, that are vocal online and that are pro-Pan-Africanists. And I say pro-Pan-Africanists because I met a lot of Pan-Africanists who aren't pro-Africa. Surprisingly, I met a lot of the antis, and I've been surprised, even me myself. So with that in mind, we have to work together. It's very important. So, I'd just like to say, thank you so much for granting us this opportunity to talk about this burning issue, because it really is a burning issue. And I feel like, I had over 3,000 emails in my inbox and over 8,000 signatories to a petition that we haven't really promoted, that we really want to come home. And so we need to be given the welcome that we deserve. We have the right to return, as Dr. Malana and Dr. Cambon say. We have the right to return. It's our birthright, as the Honorable Halifa Saleh says. And, I just want to say that, they have started in that direction. And the Honorable previous president of Ghana said that he cannot give us what we already have. He said he can only restore it. And he restored the citizenship of people returning to Ghana. And I don't believe that Ghana is the only country on the continent that has the sense and the witherall and value and understanding and care about its ancestors. And now we are the returning family and relatives of those ancestors. So we are relatives returning. And so I'm glad that they care about their relatives. Mama Africa wouldn't turn her children away.
True. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Cool. We're done with this.